Welcome to Appleton Historical Society's monthly presentation series. We are very excited to have you here tonight with us. We're excited to have Jon. Thank you, Jon. We appreciate you coming in to do a presentation for us. In the back, you will find freshly printed programs for what our Wednesday nights look like for the rest of the year, as well as information on Appleton Historical Society in general, and then also all the excellent programs that are coming up at the library. Katie has a lot of wonderful genealogy programs and different opportunities for you and things to take advantage of. So thanks for coming out tonight. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Jon. Jon was a paramedic at Gold Cross Ambulance for 14 years, during which time he began to attend nursing school. Upon becoming an RN, he worked for 3.5 years in an intensive care unit. In 1994, he was hired as a flight nurse at ThedaStar Air Medical, a position he held until 2008. At that time, he accepted a position as a flight nurse with Flight for Life. He retired from flight nursing in 2017 after a career of almost 23 years. He's the author of 2 books, Corner Calls.
I'm Called When You're Called.
I'm Called When You're Called. And Appleton's EMS Evolution, From Horses to Helicopters. We do have some of these books at Appleton Historical Society for sale, so you're always welcome to stop in and grab one from our gift shop. He was recognized with a Nightingale Award winner by UW-Oshkosh and a Star of Life by the Professional Ambulance Association of Wisconsin. He's married, the father of 2 daughters and 3 granddaughters. Jon also serves on our sports team, doing incredible work with exhibits and writes wonderful articles. There's some sports magazines in the back I saw, and wonderful articles in there related to different things around Appleton sports. But for tonight, we're going to talk about ThedaStar. Thank you, Jon. Welcome.
Thank you. All right. You hear me okay? So I was at ThedaStar from 1994 to 2008. I am not currently an employee there, and I just wanted, after recent communication with ThedaCare, I wanted to make that clear, okay? I am a former flight nurse, and I'm very much into the history of all of this, so I just wanted to make that clear. So ThedaStar, 40 years old this coming June. Tonight, well, not with the weather coming, but if there's a bad accident and you hear ThedaStar went, of course they went. Why wouldn't they be called? But in the early days, it was very tough sledding, even if the program was going to be continued. And it was like looked at like every 6 months, from what I was told, was is it not losing too much money? So it's very rough and rocky road in the beginning. Medical helicopters, but helicopters were used for patient transport in Korea. You see Radar O'Reilly there saluting you, and in Vietnam. Then in the States, we started putting people inside the helicopter with people that actually could take care of them, rather than just the pilots picking them up and taking them from the field into the field hospitals like we think of with MASH. In 1969 in Baltimore, a physician there talked to the state police to go to highway accidents and pick up patients and bring them to Baltimore shock trauma. Pretty rudimentary system, but that got it started. But really what started it was in 1970, the Wichita State football team, the Shockers, were going to Logan, Utah to play a game against Utah State. They had 2 planes, and they had some alumni, and they had some VIPs, and they had, the school president and stuff, along with the coaches and players and trainers. One of the pilots took off. They stopped in Denver to refuel. He took off from Denver, and he was going to fly and show them the Rocky Mountains. And he got too deep into a canyon, and the plane was overloaded with fuel, players, equipment, and he couldn't get out of the canyon, and he hit the side of the wall. And he killed 20-some people initially, and then 2 more died later. And the president of St. Anthony Hospital in Denver thought, gee, if we had a medical helicopter, we maybe could have got there and maybe saved some lives. So the first medical helicopter in the whole country was at St. Anthony's in Denver. They went with one pilot and one nurse, and they are still in business to this day. That was their original helicopter. The first helicopter program in Wisconsin was Flight for Life at what is now Froedtert, was Milwaukee County Medical Complex at the time. They had a small Bell 206 Long Ranger. We'll talk about that in a minute. They were the first program, 1984. 1985, MedFlight from Madison was the second program. To this day, MedFlight flies with a physician on every flight. They are the only program in the state that does that, and one of the very few in the country. That was MedFlight's first helicopter. It's called a Dauphine. It's ugly, but they could get half of UW's ER crew in it if they needed to. So June 2nd, 1986, Mr. Gary Aldridge was the president of ThedaCare. They went out to Utah, they got a helicopter. They're the third program in the state. They went into service June 2nd. Their first flight was June 6th, Oconto to ThedaCare. Do you remember the pad out on the northeast side of the hospital parking lot? They had a pad out there. It was elevated just with ground, but sat out in all the elements. This is during their open house. This is the Bell Long Ranger 206. It is a very reliable aircraft. It has one engine, and it's limited by speed and how much weight it can pick up. But this was the early helicopter or the first helicopter for a lot of programs. And without it, there wouldn't be so many programs now because people would have gone broke. So you can see inside the crew sits facing each other. So the crew would sit facing each other. The patient would be on the backboard. At the time, we didn't have a stretcher where we could sit the patient up. So we had to use pillows, like if it was a cardiac patient, they wanted to sit up. And then as time passed, we did get a fancier stretcher and stuff. But pretty tight quarters. And this was the first crew. They had 4 pilots originally and about 6 nurses. And that's what they would fly, would be a nurse-nurse configuration with 1 pilot. Now they do have a mixture of pilots, or excuse me, of paramedics and nurses. The reason they were nurse-nurse is they really anticipated a lot of inter-hospital transfers. They weren't planning to be going to accident scenes as often as they are, and right now, I think probably about 30% of their responses are to accident scenes. The rest are inter-hospitals. And it's not just trauma patients, it's cardiac patients, it's stroke patients, you name it. I think a lot of times people think it is more all trauma, and it is not. Okay, after ThedaStar's first flight, Madison and Milwaukee's programs weren't happy. They were the big city, they were the helicopters, and what the heck are they doing with a helicopter in Neenah, Wisconsin? They went to the state, and it's a long story, but a bunch of red tape was unfurled, and the program was shut down for 3 weeks as they fought licensure, and they had given ThedaCare permission to get the helicopter. They reneged on a bunch of promises, and they were fighting back and forth. And finally, Mike Ellis, who was a senator from Neenah, he went into Tony Earle's office. They were friends. And after the meeting was over, the helicopter got their license, and here they are today. The other concern was Green Bay was a day late and $1 short behind ThedaStar of getting a helicopter. They wanted to be the first helicopter in northeast Wisconsin, and ThedaCare beat them to the punch. And it took Green Bay several years to get their helicopter, which is called Eagle 3. It's run via County Rescue in Green Bay. So when you drive by the Mike Ellis Memorial Bridge, that's his claim to fame, one of them. So you can see in 1971, Dr. Paul Hodges predicted that soon there'd be helicopters landing right outside the hospital doors, and he was right. And this is a picture of the original ThedaStar in the parking lot at AMC. And the problem with that is cars are parked there, right? You're up seeing your husband in the hospital, your wife just had a baby, and then they would page overhead. The helicopter was incoming and go move your car. And hopefully everybody heard it and responded and weren't with their wife in labor, you know what I mean? So, but anyway, that was where we landed, and at a lot of hospitals in the parking lot. This is an earlier picture of AMC, and that's the helipad right in the middle. And it's still pretty much there, but you're missing the great big tower building here, okay? This is a different angle. Here's the tower building, and here's the pad still in the middle. Surrounded by a fence, pretty secure. A lot of the hospitals that we would go to, you were still in the parking lot, no fence, people come walking up, you know, kid runs away from mom. Here's St. Elizabeth's, their first pad, no fence, emergency department parking right there. And here's St. E's now, and again, a different angle, but the pad is way up at the corner of Fremont and Oneida. People can park there, and when they come in with the winds and everything and the sand blowing around, I wouldn't park there, at least if you got a newer car, but that's where it is. ThedaCare, I'm sorry, and if I say Theda Clark, with all due respect, it's ThedaCare Neenah, ThedaCare Appleton. You know what I'm talking about, okay? I've been doing this a long time and it's stuck in my head. So Theda Clark used to have one pad down by the river on the south end of the hospital, and then when Flight for Life came into business in Fond du Lac, they were bringing a lot of trauma patients up to Neenah, so they poured a second pad. Because if Flight for Life would come in and land on ThedaStar's only pad and ThedaStar had to get out for a flight, it was kind of dicey. So they have two pads side by side. And just recently, within the last couple of years, they built a pad on the north end of the hospital where the ER is. We used to have to walk all the way down the hallway with these very ill and very injured patients. And you know, privacy was a concern, and people are gawking and want to see what's going on and stuff. So now they land right here, take the patient right into the ER, and then the pilot repositions it around to the back of the aircraft. Remember what I said where it's accepted now if they fly over, you know, you might wave. Some people say they say a prayer, but it's not like it's a big deal anymore. Some guy who lived near the hospital complained to Neenah PD about the helicopter landing and taking off there, and WAPL named him their weenie of the week. This is their hangar. Again, this is a picture from when I was there. So you have room for their new helicopter, and at the time the green one was kept there as a backup. It's gone now, and it actually has been decommissioned. They can do a lot of heavy maintenance in there. And then they also, over here, they have a little office, and then upstairs they have crew quarters and you know, bathroom with a shower and a little kitchen and stuff like that. So when I was there, we worked 24-hour shifts, and we could sleep at night. We had to help out in the ER during the day, and if we did not have flights, we could sleep at night, unless, of course, you got a flight and you're up. I think now they're working 12-hour shifts, and I don't know what's going on. Yes, sir? Good question. And this is not a great slide, but if you look underneath them, they have little electric carts that it just picks it up, and they just wheel it out, kind of like it's sitting on a shopping cart or something. The other thing programs do is they have a dolly on wheels, a wooden dolly up a couple feet, and then they have a tractor that they pull it in and out. Some helicopters have wheels. The ones I worked on never did. Dr. Ray Georgian is kind of I think he's trying to pull back now, but he was the head of the trauma program and very much a driving force in a lot of good things that happened at ThedaCare Neenah. He's still practicing, but like I said, I think he's kind of the administrative type stuff, I think he's stepping away from. He came in 1990, and Theda Clark has what's called the trauma blue. So if you've ever been in the hospital and you hear code blue or rapid response, this is the ambulances or helicopters they give the patient report over the radio, and then they can either request a trauma blue or the receiving ER physician will call the trauma blue. So that means whoever the trauma surgeon is on call is brought to the ER, and they have just a big response of everybody. A pharmacy comes, lab is there, CAT scan is made ready and all that. So, and that's been going on since 1990. Since 1998, Theda Clark has been a verified level 2 adult trauma center. I just researched it, and I think there's 6 of them in the state. So they have undergone a lot of rigorous work to get to that done, and then there's a board that comes in to verify it, and I think it's every 3 years, and they've had it continuously. So you might think that accident is in Freedom. Why does a patient go to Neenah? Why don't they go to St. E's? Why don't they go to AMC? It's not that anybody's saying the care is bad there, it's just that they've got the whole system in place at Neenah. And this, again, in the early days, there was resistance to this that, I'm not going to name any hospitals, but in general, the patients bring in the money, right? So they've got beyond that, and it's like the system needs this, that we have to tip our hat to this place because they've paid their dues to get this verification. It's nothing saying that the other closest verified trauma center would be in Green Bay, and they have 2 of them. But like Mercy Oshkosh doesn't have it, stuff like that. So they've earned it is what I'm saying. The difference between level 1 and level 2, the only level 1s in the state are Madison and Milwaukee. Teaching hospitals, they've got residents there 24/7, you know, and a lot of extra resources and like that. So when I was at Flight for Life, we were based at Fond du Lac, and we would fly to a level 2 if it were closer than the level 1s. Even though, let's say it's 5 miles difference, we would go to the level 2 because that's the way it's written now. That's the way we do it. Unless it would be something really specified like a burn, a child. These are adult trauma centers. For children, it's only UW and Children's in Milwaukee that are children's trauma centers. So what they do here for a child is if they need to stop and get them stabilized at Neenah, they will. Otherwise, they may go just right down to Madison and Milwaukee if the weather is good. A lot of stuff is weather dependent. We'll talk about that. So this is, they carry packed red blood cells now on the helicopter. Everything is done by protocol. So if we go somewhere and the person's having a heart attack or a stroke, we've got a recipe book that this is how we're going to treat them. Okay? This is it's called an intraosseous. Anybody have an idea? It's a drill, and it goes into the bone. A lot of people, if they're in shock, their veins are collapsed. So you take this drill and you drill either into the top of the humerus or the inside of the leg, the tibia, and it sounds just like your Craftsman in your garage, just zzz, and you can run IV fluids in it pretty fast, and you can give medication through it, you can give blood through it. So yeah, when we weren't sure if people were conscious or not, we would say, well, we can always get the bone drill out, and then they would stir a little bit, and you knew they were better than you thought initially. I'm not kidding you. And some of them have had it before, so they know. Intubation, putting a tube in a person's airway. The nurses and medics are trained in what's called rapid sequence intubation, where they can take a conscious patient, give them a combination of medications make them totally unresponsive, which makes it much easier to get the breathing tube in. If you don't have an airway, you don't have squat. It doesn't matter how, from here down, how great everything else goes. If you're not exchanging well, a lot of things go sideways. So they do, it's nothing they take lightly, but they are able to do it. This is 11:45 a.m., and this was a trauma blue response. Patient was coming in by ground ambulance. So you've got the ER physician, a bunch of nurses, techs, trauma surgeons on his way. Patient care simulators are great because your medical director can go and run you through a bunch of, like, you know, just generic type problems like, okay, they find this guy down in the garage, he's unconscious, these are his vitals, what do you want to know? Well, was the car running? You know, could it be CO? Could it be this? Could he have a stroke? Could he do that? Well, so it's kind of like a, I don't want to say a cat and mouse game, but that's what they do. And then how are you going to treat them? And then this, I don't know who this old guy is here. This is before all my hair went gray. So in 2001, ThedaStar got their first twin-engine aircraft, okay? It was a big deal. It showed people that ThedaStar was a major player because the big complaint about it was you have this old single-engine helicopter. With the single-engine helicopter, you can't legally fly over Lake Winnebago. And if you think of Neenah, a full 90 degrees of their coverage area is Lake Winnebago. So to go to Chilton, you have to go up and around. Sheboygan, up and around. You go into Madison. Madison's got water on each side, and it's a long flight over the water into UW. It costs about almost $4 million. ThedaCare bought it. Twin engine, it was faster, had a lot more lift. We could take an extra crew member, so when I would walk down the corridor in the hospital, all these old guys would say, you can fly over Lake Winnebago now, can't you? And it's like, yes, we can. This is inside. Another young man, 2 patients, and we had a seat on the side of the patient and 2 at the head, but just a lot more room, a lot faster, just much safer. One of the crew could ride up front with the pilot when we didn't have a patient on board to watch for other aircraft or, you know, obstructions and stuff like that. And this is their latest helicopter. This one they're leasing. And their comment was in the paper is that they are not in the helicopter business, so the maintenance and all of that stuff, they have a company hired that oversees all that. And I think this is 2009 they got this one, which to me, I can't believe it's that, I'm not saying it's that old already, it's just been a long time. Okay, and this is just some information about it, 187 gallons of fuel. So on a full bag of fuel, they can go almost 3 hours, almost 400 miles. And again, it's like riding a bicycle. If you have the wind at your back, you're faster. If you're going into the wind, you're slower. But that's just general numbers to throw around. Pam Witt-Hillen is she's retired now. She's their longest standing flight nurse. She did the first flight back in 1986. And have you heard of the P.A.R.T.Y program? It was big, prevent alcohol and risk-related trauma in youth. It was kind of a copyrighted program from Canada, and ThedaCare had bought into it for many, many years. Now it's called Focus, but it's basically the same thing. It used to be once a week at Theda Clark, they'd bring in a class of high school kids and teach them the dangers of drunk driving. They would have injured survivors there that would tell them how their life has changed now that they're in a wheelchair. They would put people in cervical collars and stuff so they would know what it felt like to be, you know, immobilized and stuff. Anyway, it's at the PAC now, and they have about 2,500 kids per session. It's usually done in the spring, and I've got a couple of pictures. So you can see they bring in, they do different scenarios and stuff. These two guys are both deceased now. John Breaker, he actually was in a car accident. I picked him up at Gold Cross in 1977. And this was Kurt Romanesco, who was just great with the kids. They could ask him anything, and he wouldn't bat an eye. He would tell them what they wanted to know. Autumn Henry with her dog. All these people are fine with me using their names, okay? We're friends, they know, and they're happy to be recognized. Okay, so we get into weather. I am not a pilot. I'll tell you two pilot stories. People would ask, are the pilots trained in medical stuff? And I'd say no. But I don't know how to fly the helicopter, so we need each other. The other one was when we would go to these things, we would call them PRs. Jim was talking about we landed at Presto at a health fair. We'd go to open houses for fire departments for brat fries and stuff. And these people would always come up and they'd go, are you the pilot? And I'd say, no, I'm just one of the nurses. I sit in the back and take care of the patients. And then they'd go, oh, and I disappointed them. So the last one I did, I knew I was retiring. This beautiful blonde woman comes up and she goes, are you the pilot? And I go, yes, I am. Anyway, so during the day, if it's clear and they know they can get to Wapaka to AMC with a cardiac, they always check the weather, but during the day they pretty much have an idea what's going on. Now let's say they're going from Wapaka to Madison. That's a little bit different. So they take a longer look at the weather. Can we get there? And not only can we get there, but can we get back? Because we don't want to land at Madison and sit there for 3 days, right? So if you look at here non-mountainous, which would be us, and this is at so daytime they have to have an 800, and this is not ThedaStar per se, this is generically. ThedaStar may or may not have different minimums, okay? But 800 feet ceiling and 2-mile visibility locally. So we got to go to Chilton. What's the lowest cloud layer? Is it 1,000 feet? Is it 500 feet? If it's 500, we can't go. If it's 1,000, we can go as long as at 800 feet, we can see 2 miles, okay? At night, the minimums get more restrictive. This is with night vision goggles, what they have. So again, at night, 803. So they've got to be 800-foot ceiling, be able to see 3 miles, okay? To me, 800 at night is probably low. It's probably more like 1,000, to be honest with you. And then cross country at night would be 1,003. So the cloud layer is 1,000, 3 miles visibility at 1,000 feet. And then cross country is like Madison, Milwaukee. They have a set radius as to what, I think Shawano is probably local, but it may not be now anymore, I don't know. But that's how they determine that. The crew, the pilot always checks the weather. They've got computer stuff that they can check the weather. They're not waiting for weather on the ones with Spectrum TV or anything. They've got pretty advanced system. So the pilot makes the initial decision if we can go or not. And if he says no, it's no. If we get going and we're flying and the crew's like, I don't like this weather, stop. You turn around, go home, that's it. So when I was there, you try not to tell the pilot too much. What he needs to know besides where we're going is weight, okay? Now, if it's the 4th of July and you're going out to Winchester, it's hot and humid, you got a 500-pound patient, you're in trouble, okay? So if the patient's 500 pounds, he's got to know that. And typically in the summer when it's hot and humid, they don't have it anywhere near full of fuel because you can always put more on, which you have to burn it off. So he may know we're going for a car accident and the patient's 200 pounds in Wapaka, okay? We don't want him to know that it's a 4-year-old that grandma backed over in the driveway because the perception is you're twisting his arm, like it's a kid, or it's a, he may have a 25-year-old daughter or something like that. So you try to keep that, we know, but we don't want him to know, or her to know. They even have male nurses these days. Night vision goggles, this is what it looks like. It goes over your helmet, it flips up. So if you're taking care of the patient, you don't want the goggles in your face, so you just flip them up. They make the helmet a little bit heavier, and this is what you see. This is downtown Menasha. No, I'm kidding you. But that's what it looks like. Water looks black, but you can see, trees, you can see people. So that, in a nutshell, is what the NVGs give you. GPS coordinates. If you're a hunter or a fisherman, you may have it so you can find that reef out on Lake Winnebago, or where your buddy said the big buck is, or whatever. So the Appleton Public Library, this is the coordinates for here. So this is what we would get: 44 degrees north, 88 degrees west, and then fine tune it. So if we get a scene flight to here, that's where the GPS coordinates are really handy, because I don't care what highway is around here, you're not going to find this, especially at night, right? So that's why we have the GPS coordinates for wherever we go, or wherever we went. There's a pretty cool app. Take out your phones. Flight Radar 24. Okay, so you'll get a map like this. Here's Appleton. You can go anywhere you want in the world. So if you want to see what's going on in Iran, or if you want to see what's going on in Chicago, turn it on during EAA. And then somewhere in here, let me just look. Right here. There's the cutest little helicopter you'll see, and the blades are going. So this helicopter is UW MedFlight. It took off from Janesville. They don't know where it's going. Is at 16 or 1,800 feet, 134 knots. This is their tail number. That's a picture of the aircraft. It's the EC-145. It's the big sister to what ThedaStar has right now. So anyway, it's a real fun app, and you can use it for any plane. If your wife is coming home, tonight from Los Angeles, you can click on it and see they're still an hour away, This is a 2-helicopter scene, which you'll get a little bit of an idea. So this, I was at Flight for Life. This was a bad head-on car accident, and you can see all the help we've got here. And we had 2 critical patients. So that's why the second helicopter came. But my opinion is a lot of times the flight crew get a lot of the glory, and these guys don't get mentioned, and they're there before us and helping with other patients and stuff like that. This was the car. This is bilateral femur fractures. The biggest bones in your body, your thigh bones, your leg bones, and this girl had both of them fractured. That's a bone, and you can just see the pieces of bone all over. 2002, I still keep in touch with her. I talked to her last night. Married, 3 kids, a nurse. These 2, Phil Lewin and Dewey Tangwall from Fremont. I was in EMT class with them 100 years ago. Phil has passed away. He ran the funeral home in Fremont, and Phil was an insurance man. And these guys were on call like every day of the year because they only had a few EMTs. And this breed is dying out. you know, the local fire departments and ambulance services and stuff are really scrambling for people. So the flight environment is much different than ICU because you've got a critical patient, but I don't have Dr. Will Peterson next door that I can call for help. And I have one other caregiver with me, and we might be 40 miles from our hospital where we have help waiting. So it's either warm in the helicopter or cold, vibration, noise, gravity, flicker during bright sunny days is going on. Night flights are just more of a concern. This I'm safe thing that used to be kind of a self examination. So anyway, and you've got a helmet on, you know, so it's just different. These are not stressors of flight. This was at a PR I was telling you about. Get that smile off your face. Okay, so here we are at a scene, and we're getting ready. The patient is laying there on the ground. These are all first responders, firefighters. We're getting ready to intubate this patient. So, and it's my turn to intubate. That's me, and that's Pam Hillen, and I can tell it's my turn because she's pulling up the meds. So I'm probably bagging the patient, keeping their airway open, and now I'm going to either have to kneel and do it or lay on my belly and do it. It's a bright day, which makes it hard because you're looking in that small dark hole with a flashlight on a stick, trying not to break any teeth. So you'd probably have a firefighter take his jacket and put it over the top of me so I'm in a dark environment just to help get it in. But that's I don't want to say as hard as it gets, but that's tough to do. I got a couple of scene flights. This was near Little Chute one day, so we're up in the air, we're going to land down there. So what are you concerned about? Wires, traffic, smoke? What is that? Is that smoke like fire smoke, or is that ammonia? I don't know, but I want to stay away from it. So we've got people on the ground, we'd radio ahead, and they would set up a landing zone for us. We don't want to be anywhere in here. We don't want to be anywhere in here. Are there more fire trucks coming? I don't know. If they put us over here, I'd be fine with that depending on the wind. Traffic is blocked right there, so they're not going to put us there. But anyway, that's what we're looking at. And the pilot, you know, he's watching all this stuff. I'm maybe drawing meds up or whatever, but that's what it looked like. This was kind of an interesting one, and I show these with all due respect, okay? We're not, you know, not laughing at anybody. This is a terrible accident. This guy was driving a semi. He was going this way. He made it, he had a medical event. He went between two trees that I don't know how he made it between the trees. He had like zero clearance on either side, and he goes into a barn full of hay. So they've got a backhoe back here taking the hay out so we can get to the patient. The truck was full of ink. This is all red ink up on the silo. He was deceased. Coke versus Pepsi. This is an actual fight that we had one day. The Coke truck and the Pepsi truck collided. So recently, ThedaStar, ThedaCare, and Froedtert merged. Froedtert runs Flight for Life. So Flight for Life and ThedaStar are now basically sisters. The programs are being merged. So as their 40th anniversary approaches, there's going to be changes forthcoming. I don't know. I've been told some things that I'm not going to share. You'll see it as they unfold. It's not my place to say what may or may not be happening. But anyway, just watch that. I don't know if names are going to change. I don't know if colors are going to change. I don't know if they're going to just leave them as two separate programs and let it be that. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. This is my name tag. This is the Flying Pig. When I was, they have conferences every year, and the first one I got to go to was in Cincinnati. And Cincinnati, for some reason, is big on flying pigs. So this I paid $5 for in the hotel gift shop. And you may notice I struggle with my weight. And we had a weight limit, so I had to lose a bunch of weight to get hired into the program, and then twice a year they would weigh you. So in a way, I was kind of the flying pig. And then some of the patients that you would have to fly, it would be like, you know, are they gonna survive? Are they gonna walk again? Are they gonna go home? And it's like, yeah, when pigs fly. So it's kind of, that was me. But anyway, I think I got one more. Alive or dead? You in the back, you had a question. Are there any questions? That's what I've got. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Yep.
Well, they go over to my house all the time. Are they under radar or are you being followed?
That's a good question. Appleton's airport is 4.2 miles from Theda, which is usually where they take off from. I don't know what it is from AMC. So as they have to radio the airport and say that we're going to be taking off, and where are we going? Are we going back to Theda? Are we going to Berlin? You know, whatever. So yes, they are on radar and they have to get clearance to go. Now, let's say there's a regional jet from Chicago coming home. If we're just going back to Theda, which they often would fly pretty much over the hospital, the ThedaStar would have to look out for them. If we're going into, let's say we're going into Froedtert with a bad kid or whatever, we can request Lifeguard status and then they have to move for us. So you didn't do it very often. You didn't certainly abuse the privilege. It was there if you needed it. And usually if you know that there's a plane coming and you're there, you can just go around them and it's not that big of a deal. But if it was something really bad and, you know, EAA would be a big one if a lot of those pilots even knew what Lifeguard status meant. But they could do that. But yes, they are on radar and everywhere they go. So if, let's say they're going to Marinette. So once they leave Appleton's airspace, they're getting close to Green Bay. So they got to talk to Green Bay. And then when you get up by Marinette, you're I don't want to say you're on your own, but you know, they have to kind of let other airports know that they're there. Yeah.
What's the furthest geographic area you'll fly to?
I don't know now what they're doing. I have been to the UP when I was at ThedaStar several times. And when I was at Flight for Life, I did go to the UP and we went to Froedtert. So they usually will get gas when they're, if you're going to Berlin or Wapaka, you don't worry about it. But if you're going to Madison, Milwaukee, Marshfield, Marinette, you get fuel. And again, that's where the pilot needs to know the weight because you've got to be able to get off the ground. You don't want to fill it all the way up and then not be able to get off the ground. Somebody else? Yep.
When you're flying over cities or you're flying, what altitude do you have to stay at?
So like when I was there right now, let's say they're going to Freedom to an accident, probably 1,000 feet, maybe 800 if it's daytime and there's nobody around. Because when you go up, you got to come down. So but if you're going from here to Madison, they may go up 2,500 feet, 3,000 feet. If it's really hot, they may go higher because it's cooler up higher. So yeah, generally that. And you know, they don't try to fly over anybody's house and wake you up and all that. It's just, it's the luck of the draw. Try to land and take off into the wind. And you know, they can go straight up. But they prefer, like at Theda, they've got the river, so they can get out the river and they have a little runway as you were. But like AMC or St. E's, you've got to go up for the wires and the trees and all that.
John, where did you get your BSN? And can you talk about costs for a flight?
My so I got my associate's degree in nursing from the Tech, and then I got my BSN from UW Green Bay. Cost for a flight, anybody want to take a guess? I heard this last week. Anybody want to take a guess? How much? Okay. How much?
20,000.
Okay, of the highest bid, I heard it was higher. I don't have anything to back that up other than I heard it from what I would consider a reputable source. I don't work there. When I worked there, I never did know what it was, but it is expensive.
John, I want to thank you for what you've done. And I want to also say that ThedaStar saved my son coming up on 2 years, May 1st, 47 and S. A guy blew through a stop sign and hit my son on a motorcycle. And he's doing fine, but he spent a long time in ICU and a long time in the hospital. And the nurse that saved him and the pilot took his kids, our grandkids, and gave him a tour of the helicopter.
Okay.
Which I thought was just awesome.
Yep. We used to do that a lot because we would see the families and stuff in the hospital. So, you know, we would do that a lot. I'm glad to hear that. And, you know, again, I talked about the EMS crews at the scene that help. And Luann, I did see you walk in. Luann Kaloran from Dale, who's been doing it for how many years? 36 or 56? Yep, yep. But, you know, you saw the response for the trauma blue team, but the nurses, physicians, techs, all those people in the hospital all play a part of it. I looked at it as that we were one piece of the pie, you know, and so that's my take on it, is there's a whole bunch of people just wearing different uniforms. Yep.
You said earlier that the weather's bad, you can't go, then what do? Do they have to have an ambulance?
Yep, they go by ground. You know, Gold Cross is the primary provider in the area. There are other services for emergency calls, but Gold Cross does the emergency and non-emergency transports. And if something would happen here right now, they're the responder for here too. So yeah, they go by ground.
So you personally, did you have an interest in flight before you started this? And secondly, you mentioned that you would maybe sometimes sit up front and look for kind of like assist the pilot in a non-questionable role. But like, did you have any training about flight or any of that like background?
I was working at Gold Cross the day they landed with the first patient from Oconto, and I thought, you know, that would really be cool to do. So yeah, I wanted to do it. When we would sit up front with the pilot, there's a checklist that they have. It's not like they just get in and start your car and go, and then you're halfway to Walmart and you think, oh, I don't have my headlights on. You know, it's not like that at all. So it's kind of a back and forth where it's like there's 2 batteries and 2 engines. So they'll go battery number 1 and they'll click it and they'll go check. And then, you know, you get it up and running, and then it's check the fuel gauge and you all that. So you did help with that. And then sitting up front, I really enjoyed it. But you're looking for other aircraft, and it's not like, oh, here comes a plane. It's like, whoa, there's a plane. You know, there's specs, and it's like, what's this coming at me? Oh, and then it hit me. You know, so you're watching for all that. But wires and trees and posts and stuff blowing around, tarps and stuff like that. So it's an added safety feature when there's not a patient on board that you're helping watch for that stuff. And you know, sometimes it's, if you're going to a scene, let's pick on Freedom again, at noon, you might have 1 fire truck and 1 police car. Where's all the blinky blink? If you go at midnight, I mean, you can see it as soon as you're 500 feet off Theda Clark. So it's like, I think that's it over there, you know, and I would try to follow the roads. So if it was on Highway 55, you know, you could just kind of pick it out from Kakana or, you know, your landmarks and stuff. I miss it. I still, once in a while, I'll have a dream. They're usually good, but I miss it.
These are very critical patients. Have you ever been in a situation where the patient codes while you're up
Yep.
in the air?
Yep.
And what is the process?
They asked about if the patient codes, if they're doing now again, this is when I was there, if they're doing CPR on the scene, the only time we could take them would be if it was like a near drowning, where you could get them, or a hypothermia, okay, somebody they find outside in the winter, because you have to be a certain body temperature before they will pronounce you dead. If you're really cold, you're not considered dead. They're going to keep trying to get you warmed up and resuscitated. But if they're a car accident or a cardiac arrest or whatever, if they were doing CPR at the scene and they're still doing it, we weren't supposed to load them up in the aircraft. Maybe it happened once or twice with a kid. I don't know, but you know what I'm saying. But yes, and one that comes to mind, we went up north of Stevens Point one night. Marshfield was out on a flight. Holiday weekend, and it takes us, 20, 25 minutes. So there is traffic backed up from Minocqua to Madison on the interstate. We land, and the guy, as we're landing, high-speed rollover, he was ejected. They said he just coded as we're landing. So they're doing CPR, and we're doing a bunch of stuff. We got a pulse back on him. We loaded him up. We headed for Marshfield because we were much closer. And he coded. We got him resuscitated. He coded, got him resuscitated, got him into the ER, and then he passed away. He had just massive injuries. There's a medication we give, epinephrine, and that will sustain you for a little while. So, but that happens, and it happens once in a while where, you got some very sick cardiac patients and stuff. There's, instead of the old paddles that they used to use for defibrillation, now they've got these big pieces of tape that are on there, so they're all plugged in and ready to go. So if they would go into a lethal arrhythmia, you can defibrillate them, and then you work them, you do CPR and do what you can do and hope for the best. Yep.
You said in the beginning that for the first couple of years it was all trauma. Did I hear?
Oh, so yeah, the statistics from the early days, they were doing maybe 5% scene calls, and the last I heard it's up to 30%, and in the summer maybe 50-50 or close to it, where you're going right to the accident scene. But in the early years it was minimal.
Besides St. Vincent and Green Bay, what is the other level 2?
Aurora. Yep. And St. Vincent's, I think, has a pediatric ICU, but they're not a level 2 trauma center for kids. So I don't know if they're willing to take them. I don't know, but I do know that some kids do end up in Green Bay because of their peds ICU at St. Vincent's. And now with ThedaCare and Froedtert affiliating, I hope something like that happens in Neenah. I don't know, but I'm sure there's people looking at it. I don't know that.
In, say, an average week, how many times would you fly out?
When we got the new helicopter, okay, so 2002, we did more than 700 flights. There weren't as many programs in the state then as there are now. So I would guesstimate 500-ish, but I can't say that with any degree of certainty. Huh?
For the year?
Yeah, for the year. For the most that I did in a 24-hour shift was 7. And it was hot and it was humid. And the last one was at 6:30 in the morning from Berlin to Madison, and you're like, I'm supposed to be on my way home, I'm tired. But yeah, that's the most that I ever did was 7.
How long does it take to clean up the helicopter between flights?
That's a good question. If it's a cardiac patient and nobody gets sick or anything like that, because a lot of times, they're nauseated and stuff, so then it's just kind of a quick wipe down of everything. But if it's a trauma patient that is bleeding, it can be an hour, I mean, there are times, you know, so the floor is like linoleum, and then there's metal that is screwed in, you know, where the cot goes in, that you've got to have the mechanic undo that to get under it and everything. So it can be a long time. Yeah, so you try to stop it when you can. Yep.
Do the pilots have hour restrictions? Do you have, did you have hour restrictions as well as to how many?
That's a good question. The pilots have hour restrictions where they time out. They have to have so much rest, and I think in 12 hours, they can't fly more than 8. I'm not a pilot, so don't take that as gospel. The other thing is, I think they have a 14-hour day, so if it's at the end of their shift at 7 p.m. and they get a flight to go to Madison, they can't take it because they can't get there and get back after they've worked that long. So they would either need to have another program take it or just wait until the night pilot or the day pilot, whatever, would come in. But yes, that's a good question. The nurses did not have, you know, nope, they worked us like dogs. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
Related to that, how many pilots are there?
Today, I don't know. When I was there, we had 4. And they would typically work a week on and a week off, a week of days, a week off, a week of nights, week off. The pilots have never been ThedaCare employees. They've always been contracted. In the early days, it was Max Air, and now I think it's a company called P.A.R.T.Y. There's corporate jets. There's different companies that provide aircraft pilots, mechanics. But the nurses have always been, and the medics have been employed by the hospital, but the mechanics and the pilots were not.
Because there's different regulations between flying a helicopter and flying a plane.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother, if you're flying a patient, you're under one rule, and if you're not flying a patient, you're under another rule. So if you're flying a patient from AMC to Madison, that's one, but then coming home, it's different. And that, again, I'm not qualified to speak on that. Anybody else?
That's a good question.
Okay, thanks for having me. Get out of your way.
Hey, thank you.